there is something seriously wrong in that particular area of society or that particular area of family structure. I mean, I don't want to tell what my ideas are on the case, because that would have a personal feeling to it, but I'd rather hear what you have to say about it, and then I can add what the psychological patterns I see.
In a general sense, I think it's a little deeper than just the face value of one family.
Yes.
I think we're on the edge of the second generation that doesn't have to take responsibility for their acts. They don't understand actually owning up to their own conduct. So when you have these young parents or young husbands that get involved in something that escalates to a point where they strike out, there's an accident, there's an intentional injury that leads to death, there's no more taking responsibility for what I've done. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. We have a generation that simply shoves the dirty clothes under the bed and makes believe that they're more important than the dead victim.
So true.
And I think this repeats itself over and over and over again. It's hard to understand, but there's certain people that just will not admit that, well, I made a mistake, I didn't mean to, and take their punishment. They feel that they're above that, and I'm sure there's some psychological mix-up or genetic predisposition that creates this, but I don't believe in a domestic situation, whether it's a child or a husband or a wife, that it's an intentional homicide, because that person would have to be an idiot to not only do it in the house, but do it with family members in close proximity, contacting them, or no place to get rid of the body. Scott Peterson, Kaylee Anthony, Drew Peterson, on and on and on and on.
Yeah, and also I want to talk a little bit about Haley Cummins as well. And
yes,
what
it's the same.
What happened there? I mean, really.
You know, all of the moms. Well, Haley Cummings' stepmom is 17.
Yeah, Misty.
Misty is 17. Casey Anthony was 22 or 21 at the time. These are very young women that haven't had a chance to grow up themselves. So where is their support? Do they have any support in growing up? Where were the adults in the situation? That's always my mantra. Where are the adults, and what happened, and why was there a disconnect, so that one can commit an action and be so outside themselves that they don't, as you said, don't take responsibility, but they almost don't believe that they did it.
Isn't that kind of an out-of-body bipolar experience where they're looking down at somebody else committing the crime? It's not really them?
Yeah, it's not really bipolar, but it is definitely a disconnect. It's a dissociative character disorder.
I think Dr. Baden would have some insight into, in the decades that you've done this, do you see the different ingredients to these homicides?
Yeah. That's interesting. Two things, though. In consideration of full disclosure, my wife, the attorney Linda Kenny Baden, is one of the defense attorneys in the Casey Anthony case.
Right.
So even though she doesn't talk to me about it, it could indicate a bias here. But what's interesting listening to Mark is how a good investigator really has to be a psychologist also, to take into consideration not only how to approach people to question them, but also to approach the whole circumstances surrounding the death.
Context.
Because the context is very important in trying to figure out why that person is dead, and in the investigation process.
You know, Dr. Baden brings up a point that people don't understand, that in good relationships, as far as investigations, the pathologists and the detectives are tied in very tight, and the pathologist depends on the detective having a handle not only on the victim's life and the crime scene, but really how they saw the crime scene and how the crime was committed, because he has to tell me exactly how the person died and by what method, and all the little pieces of evidence. And if it doesn't bear out medically with what I think, then I have this information within the first 48 hours to interrogate somebody and not be caught in a theory that doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And part of it, the question about how things have changed over the years, it's hard to know how much the change is due to media exposure of events that happen all the time. But one thing is clear, that in the 60s there were 30,000 murders in the United States. Now there are about 18,000. So that the concept is every mayor, every police chief says, well, it's because we do better work. Nobody ever says, in the light of current national concerns, that it's because of better medical care. That in going back over cases in the 60s and 70s and recently, is that people who used to die of domestic violence, the wife hitting the husband in the head with a frying pan, or the husband stabbing the wife with a kitchen knife, they come to hospitals now and they get cured. They don't die. Whereas 60 years ago, before CAT scans, before better care, they used to die.
Before paramedics.
Before paramedics.
Or before the idea that it was okay to go to a psychologist, and that mental illness and domestic violence
that
should be out in the open.
Yeah.
So there's more support.
That's right. But what results is a decrease in the solvable cases. That is, the domestic cases were the ones that were the easily self-solvers. They're not dying anymore. The ones that are dying are gunshots at a distance that were hard to by strangers, that were hard to solve in the 60s, and it's still hard to solve now.
Yeah.
But they're now a bigger percentage, and that's why there are more unsolved murders percentage-wise, because of the fact that the easy ones are being solved.
When a lot of the gang cases and then different communities where people don't want to cooperate or give information, they don't want to be seen as a snitch or a rat or anything like that.
Right.
I saw just on the news this morning where a young boy, wrong place at the wrong time, was in a store, a guy walked by, 2 were injured, he was killed, it was a fatality. But what I liked when I saw the community reaction was they were out there with like a microphone saying, if you saw something, you see this video, it captures the guy very clearly. They say, you've got to come forward. You know him. You see what he's wearing. Give him up. Give him up.
So did anybody give him up?
Well, not yet, but I'm optimistic.
But this was also in Chicago. Remember, the killing that poor kid, where lots of people saw who did it, and nobody, so far as we understand, has come up to say, I know who did it.
Which case was this, Dr.
This is a kid who was just walking home from school or something, and got caught in a
gang war.
That was terrible. Yeah, I covered that on
captured the video. Dies.
An honor student.
The community, the kids know each other, but
and still
initially nobody came forth because of the snitch business.
That's terrible. Yeah, when they beat him, we had that on the video of that. Was terrible. It really was.
But as far as gangs, there is no group of criminals that can't be penetrated if detectives have skills to actually work a case like they did in the 50s and 60s before we even had sophisticated blood testing. You have to put a jacket on somebody for something else. You got to hold them. You have to take them, put them in custody, and you have to work it and have patience. And if the media is on to what you're trying to do, people will get uneasy about the confidence that you will keep their name confidential if they give you information. And that's another problem with the media. If they get onto this, they're going to be in front of that person's house, and the game's over.
And stalking that person, basically.
And unfortunately, for the media, they'll never know completely what the police investigators they have for tactics or what they have in their playbook. And we don't even know, but we can speculate where they're probably going by the actions and what they're doing. So I can kind of project what I think their idea is. But unfortunately, the media, they're not going to do that. So they are going to unintentionally step on a surveillance, a wiretap, a witness. They're going to be in front of a house. They're going to kind of indirectly subvert this justice I talk about. And we're watching TV. We do not know if the suspect is holding a live child or has buried a dead child. What you do on TV, when you show a composite, when you show a vehicle, if not done through the direction of the police department, can indirectly cause either a body to be moved where we never find it, a suspect to flee, or a victim to be killed. And we'll never know which of those happened.
It's so true. That's the thing. It's so, how do you make those decisions? Because you can put the person in a position where they feel trapped, or they've got to get rid of the evidence, that type of thing, and it can escalate to a homicide versus a kidnapping, an abduction.
Well, let's look at the Kaylee Anthony case. The body was taken from the house in a garbage bag in the trunk of the car. Did the body stay in the trunk of that car until the car was impounded some 12 days later, 11 days later? I'm not sure. I think the body was placed somewhere,
Right.
and then moved to another location where it was found, because that area was searched once. So,
And all of
I'm
a
not
sudden it appeared. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but what elevated the suspect's need to dispose of the body at another location? We don't know. Could it have been, the questions that people were asking? It certainly wasn't the media at that point, but the media played into this, not understanding the process that the suspect went through, and really you're creating a jury pool that now really doesn't understand the case that's going to be presented to them.
Because there are so many different